The ballroom fell silent the moment Elara Whitcomb stepped through the doors. Every eye turned to watch the woman whose fiancé had publicly chosen her best friend just 3 weeks prior. She should have been hiding in the countryside, drowning in shame. Instead, she wore crimson silk like war paint and smiled at the vultures circling her reputation. But when her gaze collided with the cold gray eyes of the North's most reclusive duke, a man rumored to have buried his heart with his dead wife, something shifted. 2 people destroyed by betrayal, 1 impossible alliance, and society had no idea what was coming. If you want to see how this ends, stay until the final moment. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. Now let's begin. The chandeliers of the Ashford townhouse blazed with enough candles to illuminate every flaw, every secret, every whispered cruelty that London society could muster. Elara Whitcomb stood at the entrance to the grand ballroom and felt the weight of 300 stairs land on her shoulders like stones. She didn't flinch. The gossip had started before she'd even removed her cloak. She heard it rippling through the crowd, a living thing, hungry and merciless. That's her, the one Edmund left. For Charlotte Preston, of all people, her best friend. I heard she begged him to reconsider. Well, she must have done something to drive him away. Elara's jaw tightened, but she kept her chin high. She'd prepared for this. Rehearsed it in the mirror until her face learned to lie convincingly. The red dress had been a calculated choice, bold enough to be memorable, expensive enough to suggest she wasn't broken. Her dark hair was swept up in an elaborate style that had taken her maid 2 hours to perfect, and the Whitcomb rubies glittered at her throat like drops of frozen blood. She looked like a woman who had everything under control. She felt like she was drowning. "Miss Whitcomb." Lady Pemberton appeared at her elbow, all false sympathy and sharp eyes. "How brave of you to come tonight, after everything." "After what precisely?" Elara's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well," Lady Pemberton's fan fluttered. "The situation with Mr. Hartwell and Miss Preston. I simply meant that most young ladies would have retired to the country for a season, to recover." "I'm not most young ladies." "Clearly." The word dripped with judgment. "Though, I must say, red is rather a bold choice. Some might think you're trying too hard." "Some might think a lot of things, Lady Pemberton. They usually do." The older woman's lips pursed. "Pride comes before a fall, my dear." "Then it's fortunate I've already fallen, isn't it?" Elara's voice was silk over steel. "I have nowhere to go but up." She walked away before Lady Pemberton could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. The crowd parted reluctantly, like water avoiding oil. She could feel them watching, dissecting, waiting for her to crack. Don't give them the satisfaction. The betrayal was still raw. 3 weeks ago, Edmund Hartwell had stood in her family's drawing room and explained, with infuriating calm, that he'd fallen in love with Charlotte, that he couldn't marry Elara while his heart belonged to another, that he hoped she'd understand. She'd understood perfectly. She understood that the man she'd planned to marry was a coward. She understood that Charlotte, who'd helped her choose her wedding dress, who'd held her hand and called her sister, had been a liar. She understood that London society would blame her for failing to keep her man. What she hadn't understood was how to survive it. "You look like you're planning a murder." The voice came from behind her, low, rough-edged, with a northern accent that didn't belong in this polished southern ballroom. Elara turned and found herself looking up into the coldest pair of gray eyes she'd ever seen. The Duke of Blackmore. She'd heard of him, of course. Everyone had. Ronan Blackmore, the reclusive northern duke who'd lost his wife to childbirth 5 years ago and hadn't been seen in London since. He was older than the peacocks who usually attended these gatherings, perhaps 35, with dark hair threaded with silver at the temples and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He was also staring at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Should I be concerned that you're reading my thoughts so accurately?" she asked. "Only if you're planning to act on them." His mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "Though I'd argue Hartwell isn't worth the noose." "You know about that. Everyone knows about that. It's all they're talking about." He gestured vaguely at the crowd. "That and whether you'll collapse into tears before midnight." "I don't cry in public." "No," he said slowly, studying her face. "I don't think you do." There was something in his tone that made her look at him more carefully. He wasn't standing like the other men, relaxed, confident, at ease. He stood like a soldier in enemy territory, every muscle coiled tight, eyes constantly scanning the room as if looking for exits. He looked like a man who didn't want to be here any more than she did. "You're the Duke," she said, "the one from Northumberland." "Guilty." "What brings you to London? I heard you'd sworn off society." "I had." His jaw tightened. "But my sister believes I'm becoming a hermit, and she has a distressing talent for emotional manipulation. She threatened to move to Yorkshire and marry a sheep farmer if I didn't make an appearance this season." Despite everything, Elara felt her lips curve. "That sounds like effective negotiation. You have no idea. Lady Catherine could negotiate peace treaties if she set her mind to it. Unfortunately, she's set it to meddling in my life." He paused. "I'm Ronan." "I know. And you're Elara Whitcomb, the woman everyone's pretending to pity while secretly enjoying her downfall." The bluntness should have offended her. Instead, she felt something in her chest ease slightly. At least he wasn't pretending. "You're very direct. I've lost my patience for lies." His eyes swept the ballroom with obvious distaste. "These people smile and stab you in the same breath. I prefer honest enemies." "Then we have something in common." "Do we?" He turned those gray eyes back to her, and she felt the full weight of his attention. "Tell me something, Miss Whitcomb. Why did you come tonight?" "To prove I'm not broken." "Are you?" The question was quiet, but it hit like a fist. Elara's throat tightened. No one else had asked her that. They'd offered sympathy, advice, judgment, but not one person had asked if she was actually all right. "I don't know," she admitted. "Ask me again in 6 months." "Fair enough." He was quiet for a moment, then said something that surprised her. "They're watching us." She followed his gaze and realized he was right. Half the ballroom had turned their attention to their conversation, fans fluttering, heads leaning together. The gossip mill was already churning. "They think you're my next victim," she said dryly. "The desperate spinster who drove away one man and now has her claws in a duke. Think they're wondering if I'm mad enough to court damaged goods." The words were harsh, but his tone wasn't mocking. He said it like someone pointing out a tactical disadvantage. "And are you?" she asked. "Mad enough?" He looked at her for a long moment. "What if I suggested something completely insane? I've had a month of insanity. Try me. What if we let them think exactly that?" He kept his voice low, meant only for her. "What if we played into their expectations? A courtship. Fake. Obviously. You'd get protection from the wolves circling your reputation. I'd get my sister off my back and a shield against the ambitious mothers trying to marry me off." Elara's heart kicked in her chest. "You're proposing a lie." "I'm proposing a strategy." His eyes were sharp, calculating. "You need armor, Miss Whitcomb. I'm offering to be it. No promises, no expectations, no actual attachment. Just two people helping each other survive a London season." It was madness. Absolute madness. She should refuse immediately, walk away, preserve what little dignity she had left. Instead, she found herself asking, "What would it cost me?" "Your time and your acting skills, nothing more." "And when the season ends?" "We part ways. No damage done." She studied him. This scarred, bitter duke who'd buried himself in the north for 5 years. He was as broken as she was. Maybe more so. But he was also offering something no one else had. An alliance. A partnership built on honesty instead of pretty lies. "People will talk," she said. "People are already talking. At least this way, they'll have something interesting to discuss. They'll call me calculating, a social climber. They're already calling you pathetic. Which is worse?" He had a point. Elara took a breath, her mind racing through possibilities. With the Duke's protection, the worst of the gossip would die down. She'd have breathing room to rebuild her reputation. And when it ended, she'd be stronger, ready to face whatever came next. "One condition," she said. "Name it. We're honest with each other. No games, no manipulation. If this is going to work, we need to trust each other." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or respect. "Agreed." "Then yes." She held out her hand. You have yourself a deal, Your Grace. He took her hand, and she felt the calluses on his palm, not the soft hands of a London gentleman, but the rough grip of someone who worked. Their eyes met, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps. Two wounded animals acknowledging each other's scars. "We should dance," he said. "Make it official." "I haven't danced in weeks." "Neither have I. We'll both be terrible." His mouth quirked. "Perfect match, don't you think?" Despite herself, despite everything, Elara laughed. It was a small sound, rusty from disuse, but real. "You're stranger than the rumors suggest, Your Grace." "Ronan," he corrected, "and you have no idea." He led her onto the dance floor, and the ballroom erupted in whispers. The waltz was awkward at first. Elara had forgotten how to relax in a man's arms, and Ronan moved like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. But after a few stumbling steps, they found a rhythm. "You're right," she murmured. "We're both terrible at this. I blame my sister. If she'd left me alone, I'd be in Northumberland right now, checking on tenants and avoiding people. You really do hate society." "With every fiber of my being." He guided her through a turn. The posturing, the pretense, the endless rules about which fork to use, it's exhausting. "Then why agree to this? You could have just told your sister no." His expression darkened. "Because she's right. I've spent 5 years hiding, and it's made me a coward." The admission surprised her. Most men wouldn't acknowledge fear, especially not to a virtual stranger. "I don't think you're a coward," she said quietly. "You don't know me." "No, but I know what it's like to want to hide from the world." She met his eyes. "And I know that showing up anyway takes more courage than most people realize." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something shift in his expression, a crack in the armor. "Your fiancé was an idiot," he said. "Ex-fiancé." "Even more reason. Any man who'd choose someone else over you is either blind or stupid." "You're only saying that because you need me for your scheme." "I'm saying it because it's true." His voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "I've met Hartwell. He's a spineless pretty boy who'd blow away in a strong wind. You're better off without him." Elara felt heat prickle behind her eyes and ruthlessly forced it back. She would not cry. Not here, not now, not in front of 300 people waiting for her to break. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen how badly I'm about to damage your reputation." "What are you—" Before she could finish, Ronan pulled her closer. Too close for propriety, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through layers of fabric. The ballroom gasped. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Selling the performance." His mouth was near her ear. "If we're going to do this, we need to make it believable. And right now, everyone's watching to see if this is real or if I'm just being polite." "This isn't polite." "Exactly." His hand tightened on her waist, and Elara's breath caught. This close, she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes weren't actually gray but a mix of silver and storm cloud blue. This close, he didn't look cold. He looked dangerous. "They're going to crucify me tomorrow," she said. "Let them try." His voice was low, fierce. "You survived worse, didn't you? You walked into this room knowing what they'd say, and you came anyway. That's not weakness, Miss Whitcomb. That's steel wrapped in silk." Something in her chest cracked open. She'd spent weeks telling herself she was strong, but she hadn't believed it. Not really. But when this scarred, bitter duke looked at her and saw strength instead of shame, maybe she could believe it too. The waltz ended. Ronan stepped back, creating proper distance again, but the damage was done. Every eye in the ballroom was on them, and the gossip was already spreading like wildfire. "Well," Elara said softly, "I suppose we've committed now." No turning back, he offered his arm. "Shall we give them something else to talk about?" "What did you have in mind?" "Champagne on the terrace, scandalously unchaperoned." She should say no. Should return to the safety of the wallflowers and pretend this was all a mistake. But when she looked at Ronan, she saw something in his eyes that matched what she felt inside. "Why should I hide when they're the ones who failed me?" "Lead the way, Your Grace." The terrace was blessedly cold, the winter air sharp enough to clear her head. Elara breathed deeply, letting the chill settle her nerves. Behind them, the ballroom glittered like a jewel box full of vipers. "Having second thoughts?" Ronan asked, handing her a glass of champagne. "Constantly." She took a sip. "But I'm not backing out." "Good, because I already told Lady Pemberton that I find you fascinating, and I'd hate to look like a liar." "You told her what?" "You should have seen her face. I thought she might faint." He looked far too pleased with himself. "She's probably drafting a letter to the gossip columns as we speak." "You're enjoying this." "More than I expected to." He leaned against the balustrade, and for the first time that night he looked almost relaxed. "It's been a long time since I've done anything reckless." "Is that what I am? Your rebellion against good sense?" "You're my escape route." He turned to face her. "From a life I don't want anymore, but don't know how to change." The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. "What happened to your wife?" She expected him to shut down, to retreat behind those cold walls. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment. "Emma died giving birth to a son, who didn't survive either," he said finally. "I was in London when it happened, business with Parliament. She wrote me letters saying everything was fine, that I shouldn't worry, that she'd see me soon." His jaw tightened. "She lied to keep me from rushing home. She died thinking she was protecting me." "Ronan, I haven't been able to stomach London since. Every street reminds me that I was here, attending pointless dinners and arguing about grain tariffs while she was dying alone." Elara set down her glass and did something impulsive. She reached out and took his hand. He stiffened, then slowly relaxed. "You couldn't have known," she said. "Doesn't matter. I should have been there. And I should have seen that Charlotte was in love with Edmund, that he was pulling away, that I was about to lose everything." She squeezed his hand. "But we can't live in should-haves, can we? We'd drown." He looked down at their joined hands, his expression unreadable. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." "What did you expect?" "A cold, bitter hermit who'd ignore me for the entire season and make me regret this arrangement within a week." "Give me time. I might still manage all that." She laughed softly. "At least you're honest about your failings." "Only one I have left." He pulled his hand back gently. "We should go back inside. We've been out here long enough to be scandalous, but not long enough to be ruined. You've done this before. I was married for 3 years. I learned the rules even if I didn't like them." He offered his arm. "Ready to face the wolves again? With my armor in place? Always." Yeah. They made it through the rest of the evening by presenting a united front. Ronan stayed close enough to signal interest, but not so close as to cause a true scandal. He introduced her to his sister, Lady Catherine, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 20s who looked between them with barely concealed delight. "So, you're the one who's brought my brother back to life," Catherine said, her smile warm. "I was beginning to think he'd calcified entirely." "I'm standing right here," Ronan muttered. "Yes, and you're actually talking to people instead of lurking in corners. It's remarkable." Catherine turned to Elara. "Please tell me you'll come to tea this week. I have so many questions." Catherine. "Hush, Ronan. Miss Whitcomb and I are going to be great friends, and you can't stop us." Elara found herself smiling despite the tension still coiled in her shoulders. "I'd be honored, Lady Catherine." "Please call me Catherine. Anyone who can make my brother look almost human deserves to skip the formalities." By midnight, the gossip had shifted. Instead of pitying Elara or mocking her, society was buzzing with speculation about her sudden connection to the reclusive Duke. The narrative was changing. She was no longer the pathetic abandoned woman. She was the mysterious lady who'd caught the interest of London's most eligible widower. It was working. As Ronan escorted her to her carriage, he leaned in close enough that only she could hear. "You did well tonight." "So did you. Your sister likes me." "She likes everyone. Don't take it personally." But there was warmth in his voice that hadn't been there before. "Same time tomorrow? Lady Hertford's dinner party? I'll be there." "Wear blue," he said suddenly. "Red is your war paint, but blue will make them wonder." "Make them wonder what?" "Whether you're someone they should fear or someone they should envy." He stepped back. "Either way, they'll stop seeing you as a victim." He was right. And standing there in the cold London night, watching this broken, brilliant man who'd offered her an alliance when everyone else had offered judgment, Elara felt something shift inside her chest. This was going to be dangerous. Not because of society's expectations or the risk of scandal, but because Ronan Blackmore saw her. Really saw her. Not the perfect society miss or the abandoned fiancé, but the woman underneath who was angry and hurt and determined to survive. And God help her, she saw him too. Saw past the cold exterior and the bitter words to the man who'd loved his wife enough to bury himself in grief for 5 years. Who'd come to London despite hating every moment because his sister asked him to. Who'd offered a stranger an alliance because he recognized a fellow survivor. "Until tomorrow," she said softly. He nodded once, then disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with the memory of his hand on her waist and the dangerous knowledge that their arrangement had already become more complicated than either of them intended. Elara didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The way Ronan had pulled her close during the waltz, the honesty in his voice on the terrace, the way he'd looked at her like she was worth defending. Her maid, Grace, had been bursting with questions when she'd returned home. "Is it true, miss? About the Duke?" "That depends on what they're saying." "That he's courting you? That he barely left your side all evening?" Grace's eyes shone. "They're saying he hasn't looked at a woman since his wife died, and now he can't take his eyes off you." Elara had smiled thinly. "People say a lot of things, Grace." But alone in the darkness, she wondered what she'd gotten herself into. This was supposed to be simple. A business arrangement, a strategic alliance. No feelings, no complications. So why did her heart race when she thought about seeing Ronan tomorrow? She thought about Edmund and felt nothing. The man she'd planned to marry, the man whose betrayal had nearly destroyed her. And she felt absolutely nothing when she remembered his face. But Ronan's eyes, those cold, storm-gray eyes that had warmed when he looked at her, those she couldn't forget. This is a mistake, she thought. I'm going to get hurt again. But when dawn broke and her maid brought in a delivery that had arrived at first light, Elara found herself smiling despite her misgivings. It was a single hothouse rose, deep blue, rare and expensive. The note attached was written in a bold, angular hand. For tomorrow, let them wonder. R. She held the rose carefully, feeling thorns press against her palm, and made her decision. If she was going to be hurt again, at least this time she'd choose it. At least this time she'd walk into the fire with her eyes open. And if London society wanted to watch her burn, she'd give them a show they'd never forget. The blue dress arrived the next morning with no note, no explanation, just a dressmaker's boy carrying a box that smelled of lavender and new silk. Elara stood in her bedroom staring at the gown spread across her bed like a promise she wasn't sure she should keep. "It's beautiful, miss," Grace breathed, running her fingers over the fabric. "Whoever sent this has exquisite taste." Elara didn't need to guess. The color was precisely what Ronan had suggested, a deep midnight blue that would make her look like something out of a winter storm. Not soft, not delicate, powerful. "Help me dress," she said. And Grace? Not a word about where this came from. By the time her carriage arrived at Lady Hertford's townhouse that evening, Elara's nerves were stretched thin as wire. The blue dress fit like it had been made for her body specifically, which, given Ronan's resources, it probably had been. The bodice was cut daringly low, the skirt swept back in the new fashion, and tiny crystals were sewn into the fabric so she glittered when she moved. She looked expensive, confident, like a woman who had nothing to apologize for. She felt like an imposter playing dress-up. The Hertford dinner party was smaller than the Ashford ball, only 50 guests instead of 300, which somehow made it worse. There was nowhere to hide in a crowd this size. Every glance, every whisper, every judgment would land directly on her skin. She was announced at the door, and the conversation didn't just pause. It stopped dead. Then she saw Ronan standing near the fireplace, glass of whiskey in hand, and something in her chest steadied. He wasn't dressed like the other men with their elaborate cravats and fussy waistcoats. His evening clothes were simple, severe, almost military in their precision. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Until he saw her. Then his expression shifted, just for a moment, into something that might have been appreciation. He crossed the room in 5 long strides. "You wore the dress," he said quietly. "You sent it without asking. Would you have accepted if I'd asked?" "No." "Then I made the right choice." His eyes swept over her once, quick and assessing. "You look dangerous." "Is that a compliment?" "The highest one I know." He offered his arm. "Ready to scandalize Lady Hartford?" "What are we doing tonight?" "Establishing dominance." He led her toward a cluster of guests who'd been watching them with undisguised curiosity. "They're going to ask invasive questions. I'm going to answer them with brutal honesty. You're going to look amused. That's your strategy?" "People don't know what to do with honesty. It throws them off balance." He stopped in front of Lord and Lady Carstairs, an elderly couple who controlled half the gossip in London. "Lord Carstairs, Lady Carstairs. May I introduce Miss Whitcomb?" Lady Carstairs' smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "Miss Whitcomb, how lovely to see you out and about. We were so worried after your difficulties." "Were you?" Elara asked pleasantly. "How kind." "Well, naturally. Such a public humiliation must have been devastating." The older woman's fan fluttered. "Though I must say, you seem to be recovering admirably. With assistance." The implication was clear. Elara was using Ronan to rehabilitate her reputation. Before Elara could respond, Ronan said, "Actually, Lady Carstairs, I'm the one who benefits from this arrangement. Miss Whitcomb has been kind enough to make me appear more interesting than I actually am." Lady Carstairs blinked. What?" "Well, you know how it is. Widower returns to London after 5 years of mourning. Everyone expects him to be either desperately lonely or emotionally unavailable. It's all rather predictable." He took a sip of his whiskey. "But courting a woman with a scandalous past? That suggests depth, mystery. It makes me seem far more complex than I deserve." Lord Carstairs coughed into his wine. His wife looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "Your Grace," she said stiffly, "surely you're not suggesting that I'm using Miss Whitcomb for social advantage?" "Absolutely, though in fairness, she's using me for protection from vultures like yourself, so I'd say we're even." The silence was deafening. Then Ronan smiled, a cold, precise expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Don't look so shocked, Lady Carstairs. You've been trading in social currency your entire life. At least we're honest about it." He steered Elara away before the older woman could recover, leaving her gaping like a fish. "That was cruel," Elara murmured. "That was necessary. Carstairs is the one who started the rumor that you drove Hartwell away with your demanding nature." "How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know who my enemies are." His jaw tightened. "She's been spreading poison about you for weeks. Time someone shut her up." Something warm unfurled in Elara's chest. No one had defended her like that since the engagement broke. Her own family had been sympathetic but ineffectual, more concerned with avoiding scandal than fighting back. But Ronan had just eviscerated one of London's most influential gossips without breaking a sweat. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. She'll retaliate. Let her try." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond their arrangement. They were both tired of playing by rules that had never protected them, tired of being judged by people who'd never faced real loss. "Dance with me," he said. "Here? There's no dancing at dinner parties." "Then we'll start a new tradition." Before she could protest, he was leading her to the center of the room. The other guests fell back, creating space, and someone, Lady Hartford herself, looking delighted, called for the musicians to play. A waltz began, slow and haunting. Ronan pulled her close, closer than propriety allowed, and Elara stopped caring what anyone thought. His hand was warm on her waist, his grip strong and steady, and when she looked up at him, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "They're staring," she whispered. "Good. Let them see that you're not broken, that you're not hiding." His voice was low, fierce. "Let them see that you chose to be here, with me, and you don't give a damn what they think about it." "I do give a damn." "Then lie better." She laughed, actually laughed, and felt something in her chest crack open. The fear that had been choking her for weeks loosened its grip, just slightly, and she let herself lean into this moment. Into the music, the warmth of his hand, the startling safety of being held by someone who didn't want to fix her or save her, but simply saw her. "You're better at this than you pretend," she said. "At what?" "Being human." His mouth twitched. "Don't spread that around. It'll ruin my reputation." They danced until the song ended, and when Ronan led her into dinner, Elara realized something had shifted. The guests weren't looking at her with pity anymore. They were looking at her with something else. Envy. Because she had the attention of a man who'd ignored every woman in London for 5 years. Because she wore a dress that cost more than some of them spent in a season. Because she'd walked into this room like she owned it, and no one quite knew how to handle that. The dinner itself was an exercise in social warfare. Lady Hertford had seated Elara between Ronan and a young baronet named Sir Philip Merrick, who spent the first course trying to determine if she was truly being courted, or if this was all some elaborate joke. "I must admit, Miss Whitcomb, I'm surprised to see you in such high spirits," Sir Philip said, cutting his pheasant with unnecessary precision. "Given recent events." "Recent events have taught me that resilience is more valuable than perfection, Sir Philip. Still, it must be difficult, seeing Mr. Hartwell and Miss Preston together." Elara's fingers tightened on her fork. She hadn't seen them, hadn't allowed herself to be anywhere they might appear. But the mention of their names still felt like a knife between her ribs. Ronan's hand found hers under the table. Just for a moment, a quick squeeze of solidarity, then gone. "Actually," Elara said, her voice steady, "I find I don't think of them at all anymore. I'm far too occupied with more interesting pursuits." "Such as?" Sir Philip's smile was oily. "Such as deciding whether your question is genuine curiosity or poorly disguised cruelty." She met his eyes. "I'm leaning toward the latter." Across the table, Catherine choked on her wine. Ronan's expression didn't change, but Elara felt rather than saw his approval. Sir Philip's face flushed red. "I meant no offense." "Of course you didn't. People so rarely do." She turned to Ronan. "Your Grace, didn't you mention you were expanding the tenant farms in Northumberland? I'd love to hear more about that." It was a blatant dismissal, and Sir Philip knew it. He spent the rest of dinner in wounded silence while Elara and Ronan discussed crop rotation and drainage systems, topics that should have been boring but somehow weren't, because Ronan talked about his land like he actually cared about the people who worked it. "Most landowners see tenants as profit margins," she said. "You talk about them like they're family." "They are, in a way. I've known some of them since I was a boy." His expression softened slightly. "When Emma died, they were the ones who kept me alive. Not London physicians or society sympathy, just ordinary people who made sure I ate, slept, didn't drink myself to death." "You wanted to." It wasn't a question. He looked at her, and she saw the truth in his eyes. "Every day for the first year," he admitted. "It would have been easier than feeling everything." "But you didn't." "No, because giving up would have dishonored her memory." He was quiet for a moment. "She would have wanted me to keep going, even when it hurt." Elara's throat tightened. Edmund took the easy path. He didn't want to feel uncomfortable, so he chose someone else, someone who made his life simpler. "Then he's a coward and a fool." "Maybe, but at least he's happy." "Is he?" Ronan's eyes were sharp. "Or is he pretending, the way everyone in this room pretends, smiling while they bleed inside?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to explore. The dinner ended with port and gossip in separate rooms, men to the library, women to the drawing room. Elara found herself cornered by a trio of young ladies who'd been Charlotte's friends. They circled like sharks scenting blood. "Miss Whitcomb," the ringleader, Miss Davinia Ashford, purred. "We simply must know, how did you manage to catch the Duke's attention? Charlotte said you were devastated after Edmund. We were so worried." Translation: "How dare you move on when you should still be suffering?" Elara smiled. "Charlotte is very kind to worry, though I imagine she's quite occupied these days. Wedding planning must be exhausting." "Oh, it is. She has so many decisions to make. Poor dear is quite overwhelmed." Davinia leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think Edmund is already regretting his choice. Charlotte can be rather demanding. The cruelty was breathtaking. These girls had been Charlotte's friends, and now they were tearing her apart for sport. If Edmund is unhappy, that's his concern, not mine, Elara said coolly. I've moved past that chapter of my life. Clearly. Another girl, Miss Pemberton, Lady Pemberton's equally vicious daughter, smirked. Though one does wonder if the Duke is a rebound or something more calculated. I wonder a lot of things, Miss Pemberton, such as whether your mother's reputation for gossip is inherited or taught. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I beg your pardon? You heard me? Elara stood, drawing herself to her full height. You want to know if I'm using the Duke? Fine. Yes, I am, just as he's using me. We have an arrangement that benefits us both, and it's frankly none of your business. But nothing. You don't get to judge me for surviving the same social games you play every day. The only difference is I'm honest about it. She looked at each of them in turn. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have better things to do than listen to women tear each other apart to feel superior. She walked away before they could respond, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall and tried to breathe. What am I doing? I just made enemies of half of London society. That was spectacular. She looked up to find Catherine standing there, eyes bright with delight. You heard? Everyone heard. You weren't exactly quiet. Catherine grinned. Those harpies have been running roughshod over every woman in London for years. It's about time someone stood up to them. They're going to destroy me. They're going to try, but you have something they don't. Catherine's smile turned sharp. You have my brother, and Ronan doesn't forget his allies. Before Elara could respond, the men emerged from the library. Ronan took one look at her face and frowned. What happened? Your future bride just eviscerated the Pemberton girl, Catherine said cheerfully. It was marvelous. Future, Catherine, for the love of... He cut himself off, jaw tight. Are you all right? Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. We're leaving. He offered his arm. Lady Hertford, thank you for a lovely evening. But, Your Grace, we haven't had dessert. I'm sure it's excellent. Good night. He steered Elara toward the door, Catherine trailing behind them with barely concealed glee. Outside, the winter air hit like a slap, clearing Elara's head. I'm sorry, she said. I lost my temper. Don't apologize. They deserved worse. He helped her into his carriage, not hers, his, and climbed in after her. What did they say? That I was calculated, using you, that you were a rebound or a scheme, and you told them the truth. I told them we were using each other, that it was an arrangement. She looked at him. Was that wrong? No. He was quiet for a moment. But it's going to make things harder. People don't like honesty. It makes them uncomfortable. Maybe I'm tired of making people comfortable. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, admiration, maybe something more dangerous. You're not what I expected, Elara Whitcomb. You've said that before. I mean it more now. He leaned back against the seat, studying her. Most women would have played coy, pretended to be in love, sold the fantasy. You just told them exactly what this is. Isn't that what we agreed? Honesty between us? Between us, yes, but I didn't expect you to weaponize it against them. Was that a mistake? He smiled, a real smile this time, not the cold mask he wore for society. No, it was brilliant. Now they can't accuse you of manipulation because you've already admitted it. You've taken their best weapon and turned it useless. Elara felt something loosen in her chest. So I didn't ruin everything? You just changed the rules of engagement. His smile faded. But Elara, you need to understand. They're going to come at you harder now. The Pembertons, the Ashfords, all of them. They'll see this as a challenge. Let them. I'm serious. These people are vicious when they feel threatened. So am I. They stared at each other in the dim carriage light, and Elara realized they'd crossed some invisible line. This wasn't just an arrangement anymore. It was a partnership, a war plan. They were in this together. Where's Catherine? She asked suddenly. She took her own carriage, probably halfway home by now, planning how to tell everyone about your performance tonight. He shook his head. My sister loves chaos. She seems to think we're actually courting. Catherine sees what she wants to see. Don't worry about it. But Elara was worrying, because sitting here in the darkness, with Ronan's eyes on her and his presence filling the small space, she was starting to forget why this was supposed to be fake. The carriage stopped outside her townhouse. Ronan helped her down, his hand lingering on hers just a moment too long. Same time tomorrow? She asked. The theater? Actually, I have a better idea. What? Come to Blackmore House. Dinner. Just the three of us. You, me, Catherine. No society, no performance, just conversation. It was such a simple invitation, but it felt monumental. This was him inviting her into his private space, his real life, not the polished version he showed London. Why? She asked. Because I'm tired of pretending every moment of every day, and I think you are too. His voice was rough. One night off, what do you say? Elara should have said no, should have kept the boundaries clear, the lines drawn. But when she looked at Ronan, this broken, brilliant man who'd offered her safety when no one else would, she found herself nodding. Tomorrow night, I'll be there. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, made him look younger, less haunted. Good. Catherine will be insufferable, but at least the food will be edible. He waited until she was safely inside before climbing back into his carriage. Elara stood in the entrance hall, still wearing the blue dress he'd sent, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She was falling for him. Not the arrangement, not the protection he offered, but him. The man who defended her to society matrons and talked about his tenants like they mattered and smiled like he'd forgotten how until she reminded him. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because when this ended, and it would end, arrangements like theirs always did, she wasn't going to walk away unscathed. She was going to be destroyed. But standing there in the quiet darkness, with the memory of his hand on hers and the promise of tomorrow night ahead, Elara made her choice. If she was going to be destroyed anyway, she'd rather it be by something real than by hiding from the world forever, even if it killed her. Even if it killed her. The thought stayed with Elara through a sleepless night, through the hours she spent staring at her ceiling while London slept around her. By the time dawn broke gray and cold over the city, she'd made peace with her own stupidity. She was walking into fire with her eyes open, and there was a certain freedom in that acceptance. Grace found her already dressed at 7 a.m, standing by the window watching fog roll through the streets. Miss, you're up early. Couldn't sleep. Elara turned from the window. Grace, what do people say about me? In the servants' quarters? The markets? What's the real gossip? Her maid hesitated, then sighed. They say you're either very clever or very foolish, that you've caught a duke or you're being used by one, that you'll either end the season triumphant or completely ruined, with nothing in between. No middle ground. Not for women like you, miss. Not anymore. It was brutally honest, and Elara appreciated that. She'd burned her bridges the moment she'd walked into that first ball. There was no going back to being the quiet, proper Miss Whitcomb who'd almost married Edmund Hartwell. That woman was dead. What rose from her ashes was still taking shape. The day dragged. Elara tried to read, to embroider, to do any of the mindless tasks that filled a lady's hours. Nothing held her attention. Her thoughts kept circling back to tonight. Dinner at Blackmore House, alone with Ronan and Catherine, no performance required. It terrified her more than any ball. At precisely 6 o'clock, Ronan's carriage arrived. No note this time, no flowers, just the vehicle itself, black and understated, waiting like a promise or a threat. Elara wore green, a deep forest shade that made her eyes look almost gold. Not seductive, not political. Just herself. The ride to Blackmore House took 20 minutes through darkening streets. The house itself sat in Mayfair, 3 stories of pale stone that managed to look both elegant and forbidding. Light spilled from the windows, warm against the winter cold. A butler she didn't recognize answered the door. Miss Whitcomb, His Grace is expecting you in the library. She followed him through halls that were nothing like the Whitcomb townhouse. No unnecessary ornamentation, no portraits of dead ancestors staring down in judgment, just clean lines, dark wood, and the occasional painting of northern landscapes, moors and storms, and wild coastlines. It looked like Ronan. honest and uncompromising. He stood when she entered the library, a book forgotten in one hand. He'd changed from his formal dinner clothes into something simpler. No cravat, shirt open at the throat, sleeves rolled to his elbows like he'd been working. He looked human, real. "You came," he said. "You invited me." "People say a lot of things they don't mean." He set the book aside. "I wasn't sure." "Neither was I." The honesty hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Then Catherine swept into the room, breaking the tension. "Elara, finally someone interesting to talk to. Ronan's been impossible all day, growling at servants and hiding in here like a hermit." She linked her arm through Elara's. "Come, dinner's ready, and Cook made her famous venison. You'll love it." The dining room was smaller than Elara expected, intimate enough that conversation felt natural instead of performed. Catherine kept up a steady stream of chatter about everything and nothing: London gossip, books she'd read, a horse she wanted to buy that Ronan kept refusing to purchase. "He says she's too spirited," Catherine complained, as if that's a flaw. "It is if she throws you and breaks your neck," Ronan said dryly. "I'm an excellent rider." "You're a reckless rider. There's a difference." They bickered like this throughout the meal, and Elara felt something in her chest ease. This was what family looked like: messy and honest and real. Not the cold politeness she'd grown up with, where every word was measured and every emotion suppressed. "You're smiling," Catherine observed. "What are you thinking?" "That you're both terrible at pretending you don't care about each other." Ronan snorted into his wine. Catherine looked delighted. "See, I told you she was perceptive." Catherine turned to Elara. "He's been a bear since Emma died. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't leave Northumberland, wouldn't do anything but work himself to exhaustion. I thought I'd lost him entirely." "Catherine, and then you showed up, and suddenly he's back in London attending parties, actually smiling occasionally. It's miraculous." "I'm sitting right here," Ronan muttered. "Yes, and you're blushing. It's adorable." Catherine's expression softened. "I'm glad you came tonight, Elara. Truly. It's good to see him acting like himself again." After dinner, Catherine claimed exhaustion and disappeared upstairs, leaving Elara alone with Ronan in a drawing room that felt far too intimate for safety. He poured them both brandy without asking, then settled into a chair by the fire. "My sister is not subtle," he said. "She loves you. She meddles." But there was warmth in his voice. "Though I suppose her meddling worked this time." "Did it?" He looked at her over his glass. "You're here, aren't you? In my house, drinking my brandy, looking at me like you're trying to figure out whether I'm dangerous or just damaged. Can't you be both?" "Probably." He was quiet for a moment. "This arrangement of ours, it's getting complicated." Elara's heart kicked against her ribs. "I know. I need to tell you something about why I really agreed to this." He set down his glass, his expression unreadable. It wasn't just to appease Catherine or avoid society. "I agreed because when I saw you in that ballroom, looking like you were ready to burn the world down, I recognized something." "What?" "Survival. The kind that costs everything." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "After Emma died, I wanted to die too. For months, I couldn't see the point of continuing. And then one day I woke up and realized I was still breathing, still functioning, and I didn't know why." "Ronan, let me finish." His voice was rough. "I've spent 5 years going through motions, existing but not living. And then you walked into that ball wearing red like armor, and I thought, there. That's what it looks like when someone refuses to quit, even when quitting would be easier." Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at this man who was saying things she'd never expected to hear. "You scare me," he continued, "because being around you makes me remember what it felt like to want things, to care whether I wake up tomorrow. And I don't know if I'm ready for that." "Then why am I here?" "Because I'm tired of being safe." He stood, crossed to where she sat, and dropped to one knee so they were eye level. "I'm tired of half living, and you make me want to try again, even though it terrifies me." She reached out, touched his face, the scar above his eyebrow, the rough stubble on his jaw. "I'm falling for you. I know. This was supposed to be an arrangement. I know that too. If we do this, if we make this real, it's going to hurt when it ends. His hand covered hers, warm and solid. Then maybe we don't let it end. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting. Before Elara could respond, before she could think about what she was doing, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was 5 weeks of suppressed emotion, grief and anger and desperate hope, crashing together like a storm. Ronan made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, the other spanning her waist. This was dangerous. This was foolish. This was going to destroy them both. Elara didn't care. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ronan pressed his forehead to hers. "This is a terrible idea," he said. "I know. Society is going to crucify us. Let them try." He laughed, short and sharp. "You're going to be the death of me, Elara Whitcomb. Promise?" He kissed her again, and Elara felt the last of her defenses crumble. She was his, completely, irrevocably his. And if that made her weak or foolish, or any of the things society would call her, she'd wear those labels gladly. Because this feeling of being seen, being wanted, being chosen, was worth any price. They stayed like that for hours, talking and kissing and learning each other in the firelight. Ronan told her about Emma, about their too-short marriage, and the guilt that still ate at him. Elara told him about Edmund, about the slow realization that she'd loved an idea of a man rather than the reality. "I thought I'd die from the shame," she admitted. "Not losing him. I could survive that. But everyone knowing, everyone watching me fail." "You didn't fail. He did. Society doesn't see it that way. Society is full of cowards who've never risked anything real." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You're braver than all of them combined." It was past midnight when a sharp knock interrupted them. The butler entered, looking apologetic. "Your Grace, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a situation." Ronan was on his feet instantly. "What kind of situation?" "A gentleman at the door, quite insistent. He says it's urgent that he speak with Miss Whitcomb." Ice flooded Elara's veins. "Who?" "A Mr. Edmund Hartwell, miss." The world tilted sideways. Edmund. Here. Now. Ronan's expression went deadly cold. "Tell him to leave." "I tried, Your Grace. He's refusing. He says he won't go until Miss Whitcomb hears him out." Elara stood on shaking legs. "I need to see him." "Absolutely not." "Ronan, I have to." She gripped his arm. "If I don't, he'll make a scene. He'll tell everyone he came here and I refused to see him. The gossip alone could ruin us both." "I don't care about gossip. But I do. We've worked too hard to throw it away now." She took a breath. "Let me handle this. Please." Every line of his body screamed refusal, but finally he nodded. "I'm coming with you." "That will make it worse." "I don't care. You're not facing him alone." They found Edmund in the entrance hall, pacing like a caged animal. He'd lost weight since she'd last seen him, and there were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. He looked, and Elara was shocked to realize this. Miserable. "Elara." He stopped when he saw her. "Thank heaven. I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to discuss. Please, just 5 minutes." His eyes flicked to Ronan, hardened. "Alone." "No." Ronan moved closer to Elara, a wall of protective fury. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it in front of me. This is private. Then it can stay unsaid." Ronan's voice could have cut glass. "You have 30 seconds before I have you physically removed from my property. Choose your words carefully." Edmund's jaw tightened. "Fine. Elara, I made a mistake. A horrible, terrible mistake." The words seemed to echo in the marble hall. Elara felt the world narrow to this moment, this impossible confession. "What?" "Charlotte and I. It's not working. It's never worked." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture achingly familiar. "I thought I loved her. I thought she understood me in ways you didn't, but I was wrong. Edmund, I want to call off the engagement. I want to try again with you." The silence was absolute. Elara stared at the man she'd planned to marry, the man whose betrayal had nearly destroyed her, and felt nothing. No surge of vindication, no secret joy at his regret. Just a vast, empty nothing. "Are you out of your mind?" Ronan's voice was lethal quiet. "This doesn't concern you, Blackmore. It concerns me when you show up at my house at midnight making demands of the woman I'm courting." Edmund's laugh was bitter. "Courting? Everyone knows that's a sham. You're using each other. She told half of London so herself. It's not real." "It's more real than anything you ever offered her. I loved her. You left her." Ronan took a step forward, and Edmund actually flinched. "You humiliated her publicly, threw her away for her best friend, and now you have the audacity to show up here and ask for a second chance? Charlotte has been impossible. She's demanding, controlling, nothing like Elara." "Stop!" Elara's voice cut through the argument like a knife. Both men turned to look at her. "Just stop." She walked forward until she stood directly in front of Edmund. This close, she could see the desperation in his eyes, the genuine distress. He really did regret his choice, really did want her back. 6 weeks ago, this would have been everything she wanted. Now it felt like an insult. "You're right," she said quietly. "Charlotte probably is demanding and controlling. Do you know why?" "Elara?" "Because you're weak, Edmund. You need someone to make decisions for you, to tell you what to do, to manage your life. I used to do that. I managed everything, our social calendar, our household plans, even what you wore to events. And I never realized I was doing it because you couldn't. That's not fair, Seth. It's completely fair. Charlotte is exactly like me, except she's not kind about it. She doesn't hide what she's doing behind sweetness and accommodation." Elara felt something settle in her chest, a truth she'd been avoiding for years. "You don't love me, Edmund. You never did. You love having someone take care of you, make you feel important without requiring you to actually be strong." "How can you say that?" "Because it's true. And if I took you back, we'd be miserable within a year. You'd resent me for managing you, and I'd resent you for needing it." She stepped back. "I don't want to be your mother or your secretary or your social coordinator. I want to be someone's partner, someone's equal." Edmund's face crumpled. "You're choosing him." "I'm choosing myself." She glanced at Ronan, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Whatever Ronan and I have, it's built on honesty, not convenience or habit or fear of being alone. And that's worth more than anything you're offering. You'll regret this. When he gets bored, when this arrangement ends, then I'll survive it, the same way I survived you." Her voice hardened. "Now get out, and don't come back." For a moment she thought Edmund would argue. Then his shoulders sagged, and he looked like exactly what he was, a weak man who'd lost his nerve. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." "I know, but sorry doesn't fix what you broke." He left without another word, and Elara stood in the entrance hall feeling like she'd just climbed a mountain. Her legs were shaking, her heart racing, but she was still standing. She'd survived Edmund twice now. "Are you all right?" Ronan's hand found hers. "I don't know. Ask me in the morning." That was... He seemed to struggle for words. "You were magnificent." "Was I?" She felt numb, disconnected. "I just told a man I once loved that he was weak and pathetic." "You told him the truth, which took more courage than most people have." He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into him. "Proud of you." The words broke something open inside her. Elara buried her face in his chest and let herself shake, not crying exactly, but releasing 5 weeks of tension in one trembling breath. "Take me home," she whispered. "Your home or mine?" It was a loaded question. Going to her townhouse meant maintaining propriety, keeping boundaries. Staying here meant crossing lines they couldn't uncross. "Yours," she said. "I don't want to be alone tonight." Something flashed in his eyes, heat and hunger and tenderness all at once. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." He sent word to her household that she'd be staying with Catherine, a respectable fiction that no one would question too closely. Then he led her upstairs to a guest room that was clearly Catherine's domain, all pale blues and soft fabrics. "I'll be next door if you need anything," he said. "Or if you change your mind." "Ronan, I mean it. No pressure, no expectations. Tonight was enough chaos." He touched her face gently. Sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. He left before she could argue, and Elara stood alone in the strange room feeling unmoored. She'd just rejected Edmund publicly, admitted her feelings for Ronan, and agreed to stay the night in his house. Any one of those things could ruin her if the wrong people found out. All three together? Social suicide. But lying in the unfamiliar bed, staring at shadows on an unfamiliar ceiling, Elara felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory flooded back. Edmund's midnight appearance, her rejection, Ronan's fierce protectiveness. Someone knocked softly on the door. "Come in." Catherine entered with a tray. "Morning. I heard we had excitement last night." "Your brother told you." "The servants told me. Ronan just confirmed it." She set the tray on the bedside table. "For what it's worth, I think you handled Edmund perfectly. He deserved worse." "You don't think I was cruel?" "I think you were honest. And that's the cruelest thing you can be to someone who's been lying to themselves." Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you in love with my brother?" Elara's breath caught. The question was so direct, so impossible to deflect. "Yes," she whispered. "I think I am." Catherine's smile was radiant. "Good, because he's in love with you too, though he'll probably deny it for another month. Stubborn fool." "Catherine, this arrangement was supposed to be temporary." "Nothing worth having is temporary." Catherine squeezed her hand. "Don't overthink it. Just let yourself be happy." If only it were that simple. Elara dressed and went downstairs to find Ronan in his study, surrounded by correspondence. He looked up when she entered, and his expression softened. "Sleep well?" "Better than expected." She sat across from him. "What happens now?" "Now? Now London wakes up and realizes Edmund Hartwell showed up at my house at midnight looking for you. The gossip will be vicious." Her stomach dropped. "I didn't think... I know, neither did I." He leaned back in his chair. "My staff is discreet, but someone will talk. Someone always talks." "What do we do?" "We control the narrative." His eyes were calculating. "We tell people the truth. That Edmund tried to win you back and you rejected him publicly. That you chose me instead. That makes it sound like we're actually together. Aren't we?" The question hung in the air, weighted with possibility and danger. "I don't know," Elara admitted. "Last night I said things I meant, felt things that terrified me. But in the daylight, I don't know what this is." "Then let me make it clear." Ronan stood, came around the desk, and took both her hands. "I want this to be real. Not an arrangement, not a performance. Real. You and me figuring out what comes next together." "Ronan, I know it's fast. I know we started this as strategy, but I haven't felt this alive in 5 years. And I'll be damned if I let it go because society thinks we should wait a respectable amount of time." His words echoed everything she felt. The wild, reckless hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this pain. "If we do this, there's no going back," she said. "No pretending it was all fake if things go wrong. I don't want to go back. I want to move forward. With you." She looked at him, this complicated, damaged man who'd offered her safety and somehow given her so much more. And she made her choice. "Then let's move forward." He kissed her, and it felt like sealing a contract, a promise, a beginning. They had 3 days of peace before everything fell apart. The gossip about Edmund's midnight visit spread like wildfire. But instead of condemning Elara, society seemed torn. Half thought she was a calculating seductress who'd stolen a duke. The other half thought she'd been incredibly brave to reject a man who'd wronged her. For the first time since the engagement broke, public opinion was divided. Then Lady Pemberton made her move. It started with a letter, delivered to the Whitcomb townhouse by private messenger. Elara opened it alone in her drawing room and felt the blood drain from her face. "Miss Whitcomb, I thought you should know that your association with the Duke of Blackmore may not be what it appears. I have it on good authority that His Grace's financial situation is far more precarious than anyone realizes. The northern estates are hemorrhaging money, and he faces ruin within the year. One must wonder if his sudden interest in you, a woman with a substantial dowry, is quite as romantic as he claims. A friend. The letter wasn't signed, but the handwriting was Lady Pemberton's. Elara would recognize that spiteful scrawl anywhere. Her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the paper. It couldn't be true. Ronan wouldn't. He'd said this was real, that he wanted her, not her money. But a poisonous voice in her head whispered, "Edmund said he loved you too." And look how that turned out. She needed to see the truth for herself. Elara spent the next 2 days doing something she'd never done before, investigating. She talked to her father's steward, made discreet inquiries through banking connections, pieced together a picture of Ronan's finances. What she found made her sick. Blackmore estates were failing, had been failing for years ever since Emma's death. Ronan had poured money into improvements that hadn't worked, supported tenants through bad harvests, refused to raise rents when his peers had. He'd been trying to be a good landlord, and it was bankrupting him. He needed money desperately, and Elara had one of the largest dowries in London. The numbers didn't lie. If Ronan married her, his financial problems would disappear overnight. Everything he'd said about wanting her, choosing her, making this real, it could all be a lie. A more sophisticated version of their original arrangement. She didn't want to believe it, but she'd been a fool before, and it had nearly destroyed her. She wouldn't make that mistake again. When Ronan came to call the next afternoon, Elara was ready. She met him in the drawing room, the letter hidden in her pocket like a weapon. "You look upset," he said immediately. "What's wrong?" "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth." His expression shifted, became wary. "All right. Are you going bankrupt?" The silence was damning. "Elara, just answer the question. Yes or no?" "It's not that simple. Yes or no, Ronan?" He looked at her, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. "Yes. If things don't change within the year, I'll lose everything." The confirmation hit like a physical blow. "And you didn't think to mention this? When you were courting a woman with a fortune?" "It's not like that, isn't it?" She pulled out the letter, thrust it at him. "Someone sent me this, told me exactly what you've been hiding." He read it, his expression darkening. "Pemberton, that vindictive—" He looked up. "You can't possibly believe this." "Why not? You admitted it's true. The finances are true. My intentions aren't." He stepped toward her, but she backed away. "Elara, I never pursued you for your money. The arrangement was your idea, remember? I agreed to help you, not to rob you." "But it's convenient, isn't it, that the woman you suddenly decided to really court happens to be wealthy enough to save you?" "That's not why I want you." "Then why?" She was shaking now, anger and fear warring in her chest. "Give me one reason to believe you're different from Edmund. One reason why I should trust that you're not just using me." "Because I love you." The words exploded into the room like artillery fire. Ronan stood there, breathing hard, looking as shocked as she felt. "What?" "I love you." His voice was rough, raw. "I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But I do. And yes, marrying you would solve my financial problems, but I'd rather lose every acre of land I own than have you think I'm only after your fortune." Elara's throat closed. "You're just saying that—" "I'm saying it because it's true. Because I'm tired of hiding from everything that matters." He crossed to her, took her hands even when she tried to pull away. "You want honesty? Here it is. I'm failing. As a landowner, as a duke, as a man. The estates are dying, and I don't know how to save them without compromising everything I believe in." "Then why not just tell me?" "Because I was ashamed." The admission seemed torn from him.
Bitte words.
"Because I'd already failed Emma, failed my tenants, and I couldn't bear for you to see me as another man who couldn't protect what mattered. But I should have told you. I should have been honest from the start." She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. "Lady Pemberton said you were just after my dowry. Lady Pemberton is trying to destroy you because you humiliated her daughter. She'll say anything to drive us apart." His grip tightened. "Don't let her win. Don't let fear make you run from something real." "How do I know it's real?" "Because I'm standing here terrified you'll walk away, and I'm still telling you the truth." His voice cracked. "I love you, Elara. I love your courage, your fire, The way you refuse to break even when the world is trying to crush you, and if you can't trust that, then I've already lost. Tears burned her eyes. I don't know how to do this. How to trust again after everything. Neither do I. But we can learn together. He pulled her close, and she let him, let herself lean into the warmth of him. I'm not Edmund. I'm not going to abandon you when things get difficult. I'm going to fight for you, for us, for whatever future we can build. She buried her face in his chest, breathing him in. This is insane. Completely. We're going to get hurt. Probably. And you still want to try? More than anything. Elara pulled back enough to look at him. Then we do this my way. No more secrets, no more hiding. We tell each other everything, even the ugly parts. Agreed. And we face whatever comes together, even if it destroys us. Especially then. She kissed him, and it felt like jumping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating and utterly irreversible. They were in this now. Really, truly in it. And London was about to watch them burn. The attack came 3 days later, at the Thornbury Ball, the largest, most prestigious event of the season. Elara wore silver, Ronan wore black, and they entered together like they owned the place. Lady Pemberton was waiting. She intercepted them in the ballroom, surrounded by her cronies, her smile sharp as broken glass. Your Grace, Miss Whitcomb, how lovely to see you both. I was just telling Lady Thornbury about the most interesting rumor. Were you? Ronan's voice was bored. Oh, yes. Something about financial difficulties in Northumberland, estates in danger, debts mounting. Her eyes glittered. Such a shame when old families fall on hard times, though I suppose a strategic marriage could solve such problems, couldn't it? The conversation around them died. Every ear in the ballroom turned their direction. Elara felt the trap snap shut. This was the moment, the choice. She could deny everything, protect herself, walk away from Ronan and save her reputation. Or she could fight. She looked at Ronan and saw him preparing to take the blow alone, to shield her from the consequences. Like hell. You're absolutely right, Lady Pemberton, Elara said clearly. A strategic marriage could solve a lot of problems. Money troubles, for instance. Or crushing loneliness. Or the desperate need to feel like you matter to someone. I beg your pardon? My first engagement was strategic. Edmund needed a well-connected wife to advance his political career. I needed marriage to fulfill social expectations. We were using each other, and we called it love. She stepped forward. But what the Duke and I have, that's not strategy, that's choice. How convenient that you choose the man who needs your fortune. He doesn't need my fortune. He needs a partner. Someone who will stand beside him when things are hard, not someone who will abandon him at the first sign of difficulty. Elara's voice rang clear. Yes, the Blackmore estates are struggling. Yes, my dowry could help, but I'd marry him tomorrow if he was penniless, because what we have is worth more than money or status or whatever pathetic power you think you have. The ballroom was dead silent. Lady Pemberton's face had gone purple. You little— Enough! Ronan's voice cut through the air like a blade. You've made your position clear, Lady Pemberton. Allow me to make mine equally clear. I love Elara Whitcomb. I intend to marry her with or without society's approval. And if you or anyone else has a problem with that, you can direct your complaints to me personally. I'll be happy to explain exactly what I think of you. Your Grace, you cannot possibly— Can't I? Watch me. He took Elara's hand, held it up for everyone to see. This woman is braver than anyone in this room. She's survived betrayal and humiliation and come out stronger. And I'm honored that she'd consider spending her life with me. Elara's heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Ronan, I know we agreed to take this slow, but I'm tired of slow. He dropped to one knee right there, in the middle of the ballroom, in front of 300 witnesses. Elara Whitcomb, will you marry me? Not because it's strategic, not because it solves problems, but because I love you and I want to build a life with you. The world stopped. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were supposed to be pretending, playing roles, surviving the season. But Ronan was looking at her like she was the only person in the room, and his hand was steady on hers, and he'd just offered her everything. Choice, trust, love. The real kind. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes! He stood, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her in front of everyone. And Elara heard the ballroom erupt, gasps and cheers and shocked whispers. But she didn't care. She'd chosen. Finally, fully chosen something for herself. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. The celebration lasted exactly 10 minutes before everything went to hell. Someone screamed, the crowd parted, and Charlotte Preston stood in the ballroom doorway, her face streaked with tears, a letter crumpled in her shaking hand. You! She pointed at Elara, her voice breaking. You knew Edmund never loved me, and you said nothing. The ballroom went silent again, but this time the energy was different, dangerous. Charlotte, Elara started. Don't pretend you're innocent. Charlotte stumbled forward, clearly beyond reason. I found the letters. The ones he wrote you before the engagement broke. He was planning to leave me even then. And you knew. Ice flooded Elara's veins. What letters? These, Charlotte thrust the papers forward. Where he tells you he made a mistake, that he should have married you, that he's only with me because he's too much of a coward to admit the truth. Elara stared at the letters. Edmund's handwriting, Edmund's words, and felt the ground dissolve beneath her feet. She'd never seen these letters, never received them, which meant someone had intercepted them, hidden them, and now released them at precisely the right moment to cause maximum damage. Ronan took the letters, scanned them quickly, and his expression went lethal. These are addressed to Elara. How did you get them? They were delivered to me this morning, anonymously. Charlotte's laugh was wild, broken. Someone wanted me to know the truth, that I'm a fool, that I've always been second choice. The trap was perfect. Charlotte publicly humiliated, Edmund exposed as a liar, and Elara painted as a woman who'd known about Edmund's continued affections and said nothing. Lady Pemberton had outdone herself. I never received those letters, Elara said, her voice shaking. I swear I never… Liar. Charlotte lunged forward, and only Edmund's sudden appearance stopped her. He grabbed his fiancée's arm, pulled her back. Charlotte, please, don't touch me, she wrenched away from him. Don't ever touch me again. She ran from the ballroom, Edmund chasing after her, leaving chaos in their wake. The guests erupted into furious gossip. Elara stood frozen, feeling the weight of 300 stares, 300 judgments. This was worse than the original betrayal. This was catastrophic. We need to leave, Ronan said quietly. Now. But Lady Thornbury stepped forward, her expression cold. I'm afraid I must ask you both to depart. This kind of scandal has no place at my event. We didn't cause this, didn't you? Whether intentionally or not, Miss Whitcomb, you're at the center of a disaster. Again. She gestured toward the door. Please go. They were being thrown out, publicly expelled from the most important ball of the season. Elara felt humiliation burn through her like acid, but she held her head high, took Ronan's arm, and walked out with as much dignity as she could muster. Outside, in the cold London night, she finally let herself shake. This is bad, she whispered. This is really bad. We'll fix it. How? How do we fix this? She turned to face him. Everyone thinks I've been manipulating Edmund, that I destroyed Charlotte out of spite. Your proposal looks like a desperate attempt to salvage my reputation. We're ruined, Ronan, completely ruined. Then we leave London. She stared at him. What? We leave, tonight, go to Northumberland, get married quietly, let society forget about us. His grip on her arms was fierce. I don't care what they think. I care about you. You'll lose everything. Your position, your reputation. I'm already losing everything. The estates are failing, remember? At least this way, I lose it with you beside me. It was insane, reckless, social suicide. But what did they have to lose that hadn't already been taken? Elara looked at this man who'd offered her everything, safety, partnership, love, and made her final choice. When do we leave? His smile was fierce and bright. Now, right now. They ran for his carriage, leaving London and its poisonous judgments behind, and neither of them saw Lady Pemberton watching from the Thornbury windows, her smile triumphant. She'd won. She'd destroyed them both. Or so she thought. The carriage wheels hit frozen road, and didn't stop. Elara watched London disappear behind them, the lights, the spires, the glittering poison of society fading into winter darkness. Catherine had insisted on coming with them, appearing at the carriage door with a hastily packed trunk and a fierce expression that brooked no argument. "You think I'm letting you two face this alone? After that disaster?" She'd climbed in without waiting for permission. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you actually eat during this dramatic escape." Now she sat across from them, watching Elara and Ronan with sharp eyes. "Are you going to tell me the plan, or are we just fleeing into the wilderness and hoping for the best?" "The second one," Ronan said. "Wonderful. My favorite kind of plan." Elara couldn't stop shaking. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the cold reality of what they'd just done. They'd abandoned London in the middle of the season, run from scandal like criminals, destroyed any hope of salvaging their reputations. "I should have stayed," she said. "Faced them. Fought back." "And said what?" Ronan's voice was rough. "Those letters were real, Elara. Edmund really did write them. Whether you received them or not doesn't matter. Society will believe what it wants to believe." "So we just give up?" "We regroup. Figure out who set this trap and why." His jaw was tight. "Someone intercepted those letters. Someone held them for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to detonate them. That takes planning." "Pemberton," Catherine said flatly. "It has to be. She's been gunning for you both since the beginning." "But how did she get Edmund's letters?" "Bribed a servant? Intercepted the post?" Catherine shrugged. "The how doesn't matter. What matters is she used them as a weapon." Elara stared out the window at darkness rushing past. "Charlotte." She looked destroyed. "Charlotte made her own choices," Ronan said. "She chose to betray you with Edmund. Whatever consequences she faces now, she earned them." It should have felt like vindication. Instead, Elara just felt sick. They rode through the night, stopping only to change horses. By dawn, they were well north of London, the landscape shifting from manicured estates to wilder country. Elara dozed fitfully against Ronan's shoulder, her dreams full of ballrooms and accusations and Lady Pemberton's triumphant smile. She woke to find them stopped at a coaching inn, morning light streaming through frost-covered windows. "Where are we?" "Near Durham," Ronan said. "We'll rest here for a few hours, then continue. Blackmore is another day's journey." Inside the inn, they took private rooms. Catherine disappeared to arrange for food while Ronan and Elara stood in a small chamber that smelled of wood smoke and old stone. "This is insane," Elara said. "We're running away. We're making a tactical retreat." He pulled her close. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, because we're not giving up. We're choosing our battlefield." His hands framed her face. In London, they had all the power. The gossip, the social pressure, the ability to destroy us with whispers. But in Northumberland, that's my territory. My people. And they don't give a damn what Lady Pemberton thinks. "You really want to marry me after all this?" "More than ever." His smile was crooked. "You said yes in front of 300 witnesses. I'm holding you to that." "I'm ruined, Ronan. My reputation is—" "Your reputation in London is ruined, but London isn't the whole world." He kissed her forehead. "There's a whole life waiting for us in the north. A real life, not this performance we've been staging." She wanted to believe him, wanted to think they could just walk away from society and build something new. But the fear was still there, cold and heavy in her chest. Catherine returned with bread, cheese, and news. "I talked to the innkeeper. Apparently there are riders from London on the road behind us. 3 men, asking after a duke and a lady traveling together." Ronan's expression went hard. "Pemberton's people? Or reporters? Or both?" Catherine bit into an apple. "Either way, we need to move faster." They left within the hour, pushing the horses hard. The landscape grew rougher, more dramatic, rolling hills giving way to stark moorland, forests of bare trees clawing at gray sky. It was beautiful in a harsh way, like Ronan himself. Elara understood why he'd buried himself here. This place was honest, unforgiving, real, everything London wasn't. They reached Blackmore Estate as dusk fell on the second day. Alara's first glimpse was of a sprawling stone manor house set against winter moors, smoke rising from multiple chimneys, lights glowing warm in the gathering darkness. It looked like home. The staff came out to greet them, a small army of servants who clearly adored Ronan. Mrs. Brennan, the housekeeper, took one look at Alara's exhausted face and immediately ordered hot baths and food. "Don't you worry, Your Grace," she said to Ronan. "We'll take care of the lass." "She's not—" Ronan paused. "Actually, she will be. Soon. This is my fiancée, Miss Whitcomb." Mrs. Brennan's eyes widened. Then she smiled broadly. "Well then, about time you brought someone home. Come, miss, let's get you settled." Elara found herself swept into the house, upstairs, into a massive bedroom with a fire already blazing and a copper tub being filled with steaming water. She sank into it gratefully, feeling days of tension dissolve. When she emerged, someone had laid out clean clothes, simple country garments, nothing like her London finery. She dressed slowly, studying herself in the mirror. She looked different, younger somehow, without the armor of fashion and jewels. Just herself. Dinner was served in a cozy dining room, nothing like the formal affairs in London. Catherine dominated the conversation, charming the servants and making Ronan smile despite everything. Elara mostly listened, letting the warmth and normalcy wash over her. This was what life could be. Simple. Honest. Good. After dinner, Ronan took her on a tour of the house. It was beautiful in an understated way. Solid furniture, well-worn rugs, portraits of ancestors who looked as stern and uncompromising as Ronan himself. "Emma decorated most of this," he said, stopping in a portrait gallery. "She had better taste than I did." Elara studied a painting of a laughing woman with kind eyes. She was beautiful. She was good. Too good for me, probably. He was quiet for a moment. "I thought I'd never be able to bring another woman here, that it would feel like betrayal." "And does it?" "No. It feels right." He took her hand. "I think she'd like you. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me wallow in my own misery. I'm good at that. Among other things." He led her to a library that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling books, leather chairs by the fire, windows overlooking the moors. It was perfect. "This is where I spent most of the last 5 years," Ronan admitted. "Reading, drinking too much, avoiding reality. And now? Now I want to live again." He pulled her into his arms. "With you. If you'll still have me after all this chaos." Elara looked up at him, this complicated, damaged man who'd offered her everything when she had nothing. "I said yes, didn't I?" "You did." In spectacular fashion. His smile faded. "But that was before the scandal exploded. Before we had to run. I need to know you're sure. That this is what you want." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "I have no idea what we're doing or how this ends, but I'm sure about you, about us. That's enough." He kissed her, and it felt like coming home. They were married 3 days later in the small church on the estate, with Catherine as witness and Mrs. Brennan weeping happily in the front pew. No London spectacle, no society performance, just vows spoken in front of people who actually cared about them. Elara wore a simple blue dress and wildflowers in her hair. Ronan wore his best coat and looked at her like she was the only person in the world. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Elara felt something settle in her chest. This was real, permanent, hers. The celebration afterward was small but joyful. The household staff, a few tenant families, Catherine orchestrating everything with military precision. Someone produced a fiddle, and there was dancing in the great hall, clumsy and enthusiastic. Ronan pulled Elara into his arms for a waltz, and she laughed at how much easier it was here, with no one watching or judging. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." "Having second thoughts?" "About 100, but I'm not running." "Good, because I'd chase you." Later, alone in the master bedroom that was now theirs, Elara stood by the window looking out at moonlit moors. Ronan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "That Lady Pemberton won," she said quietly. "She wanted to destroy us, and she succeeded. We're exiled, Ronan, cut off from society. hiding in the north like criminals. Or we're free. Are we? Your finances are still failing. We still have enemies. Nothing's actually solved. Not yet. He turned her to face him. But we will solve it, together, starting tomorrow. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, we start fixing this estate, making it profitable again, building something that can't be taken away by gossip or scandal. His eyes were fierce. And we send word to London that we're not hiding. We're choosing a different life. They'll say we're running away. Let them. Their opinions don't matter anymore. She wanted to believe that, wanted to think they could just walk away from society and be happy. But she'd learned the hard way that nothing was ever that simple. The next morning brought news that shattered their fragile peace. A writer arrived from London with a packet of letters and newspapers. Catherine opened them while Ronan and Elara were having breakfast. Her face went white. "What is it?" Ronan demanded. "Edmund and Charlotte, their engagement is off." Catherine looked up. "And Edmund's dead." The room went silent. "What?" Elara's voice was barely a whisper. "He shot himself 3 days ago. They found him in his study with a letter addressed to you." Catherine's hands were shaking. "The papers are saying he died of a broken heart, that the scandal killed him." Elara felt the world tilt. Edmund was dead. The man she'd almost married, the man who'd betrayed her and then tried to win her back, dead. "Let me see that." Ronan took the newspaper, scanned it quickly. His expression went dark. "They're blaming you, saying your rejection drove him to suicide." "That's not... I didn't..." "Of course you didn't, but that's what they're printing." He read aloud. "Sources close to the family suggest Mr. Hartwell never recovered from Miss Whitcomb's cold dismissal. His desperate attempts to reconcile were met with cruel indifference, driving him to take his own life in despair." "That's a lie," Elara's voice cracked. "I wasn't cruel. I was honest." "They don't care about truth. They care about narrative." Catherine grabbed another paper. "And Pemberton's been feeding them this narrative for days. Listen to this. One must question Miss Whitcomb's role in this tragedy. First, she allegedly knew of Mr. Hartwell's continued affection and said nothing. Then she publicly humiliated him by announcing her engagement to the Duke of Blackmore mere days after refusing his reconciliation. The result? A young man dead by his own hand, unable to bear the shame." Elara couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. Edmund couldn't be dead. And they couldn't be blaming her for it. "I need to go back to London," she said. "Clear my name. Tell them the truth." "Absolutely not." Ronan's voice was steel. "That's exactly what Pemberton wants. You show up, they'll tear you apart. Accuse you of being heartless, of not caring that a man died for you. But I can't just hide here while they... We're not hiding. We're strategizing." He stood, began pacing. "Edmund's death changes everything. This isn't just scandal anymore. It's tragedy. And tragedy makes people emotional, irrational. So what do? We fight back, but not on their terms, not with gossip and accusation." His eyes were calculating. "We use the truth, the real truth, not their twisted version." "How?" "I have friends in London, people who owe me favors, journalists who care more about facts than sensation." He looked at Catherine. "We get Edmund's real letters published, the ones he wrote to Elara that she never received. We show that someone intercepted them deliberately." "That will implicate Pemberton," Catherine said slowly. "Exactly. She wanted to destroy Elara. Instead, we expose her as a manipulator who drove a man to suicide through her schemes." Elara stared at him. "That's vicious. That's survival. She started this war. We're going to end it." Catherine nodded slowly. "I know a few journalists, and I still have friends in London who never believed the worst about you, Elara. Society ladies who were appalled by how you were treated." "Rally them," Ronan said. "Start a counter-narrative. Elara as victim, not villain. A woman who survived betrayal, rejected an unstable man kindly, and was punished for it by vengeful gossips." "And the financial problems?" Catherine asked. "Pemberton will use those against you. Then we address them head-on. I'll publish the estate accounts. Show exactly how I spent every penny trying to help my tenants survive bad harvests. Let society judge whether compassion is more valuable than profit." It was risky, radical, everything society would hate, but it was also brilliant. You're turning our weaknesses into weapons, Elara said slowly. I'm telling the truth in a way they can't ignore. Ronan took her hands. But Elara, this will get ugly. They'll attack you more viciously than before. Call you a murderer, a gold digger, worse. Let them. I'm tired of being afraid. Are you sure? She thought about Edmund, weak, indecisive Edmund, who'd taken the coward's way out rather than face his mistakes. She thought about Charlotte, who'd betrayed her and was now probably drowning in guilt. She thought about Lady Pemberton, who'd orchestrated this entire disaster for the sake of petty revenge. And she thought about herself. The woman she'd been 6 weeks ago, terrified and broken, versus the woman she was now. Married to a man who saw her strength instead of her shame. Living in a place where honesty mattered more than appearances. I'm sure, she said. Let's burn it all down. The campaign began immediately. Catherine left for London the next day, armed with letters, strategy, and fury. Ronan sent messages to his contacts, journalists, politicians, anyone with influence and a grudge against the Pembertons. And Elara wrote her own account. She sat in the library for 3 days, pouring everything onto paper. The truth about Edmund and Charlotte's betrayal, her arrangement with Ronan and how it became real. The intercepted letters and the deliberate destruction of her reputation. Edmund's midnight visit and her honest rejection. She didn't soften anything, didn't make herself the perfect victim. She admitted her own mistakes, her own doubts, her own calculated choices. She wrote it like she was confessing to a friend. Raw, messy, human. When she finished, Ronan read it in silence. Then he looked at her with something like awe. This will change everything. Or make everything worse. Either way, it's the truth. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. They sent it to 3 different newspapers. Within a week, London exploded. The first responses were predictably vicious. The Pemberton faction doubled down, calling Elara a liar and a murderer. But then something unexpected happened. Other women started speaking up. Lady Hartley, a widow who'd been ostracized for remarrying too quickly after her husband's death, published a letter defending Elara. Then Miss Sarah Cunningham, who'd been shamed out of society for refusing an arranged marriage, added her voice. Then others, women who'd been judged, condemned, destroyed by the same systems that were attacking Elara. They formed an unlikely alliance. A chorus of female voices saying, "Enough!" Catherine sent regular updates. The tide was turning, slowly but surely. Society was dividing into camps, those who believed Elara was a victim of Pemberton's schemes, and those who still thought she was guilty. But the important thing was, people were questioning, doubting, demanding evidence instead of accepting gossip. And then the breakthrough came. A housemaid from the Pemberton household came forward with a confession. She'd been ordered to intercept Edmund's letters to Elara, to hold them until Lady Pemberton gave the signal to release them. She had proof, receipts, instructions in Lady Pemberton's handwriting, dates that matched everything perfectly. Pemberton had orchestrated the entire scandal. The revelation was devastating. Within days, Lady Pemberton was the one being ostracized. Her daughters were cut from guest lists. Her husband faced censure in Parliament. The family that had ruled London gossip for decades was falling apart. The letter from Catherine that announced this victory was jubilant. You won, Elara. You actually won. Pemberton is destroyed. Her allies are scrambling to distance themselves, and society is falling over itself to apologize to you. There's talk of you and Ronan being invited to present yourselves at court as a show of support. The Queen herself is reportedly sympathetic. Come back to London. Let them see you triumphant. Let them know you survived. Elara read the letter 3 times, then handed it to Ronan. We could go back, she said, reclaim our place in society, win completely. Is that what you want? She looked around the library, at the books, the fire, the windows showing winter moors. She thought about the last few weeks, the simplicity of life here, the way Ronan smiled more easily, laughed more often, the way she woke up every morning without the crushing weight of performance. No, she said quietly. I don't think it is. You're sure? This is your chance to have everything. I already have everything, here, with you. She took his hand. Let Catherine manage London. Let society apologize and invite and speculate. We'll visit occasionally, maintain appearances. But this, Northumberland, the estate, building a real life, this is what I want. Ronan pulled her close. You're sure you won't regret it? Giving up your triumph? The triumph is that I don't need their approval anymore. She smiled. I survived them. That's victory enough. They wrote back to Catherine together, declining the invitation to return to London. Instead, they invited her to bring anyone who wanted to visit North to Blackmore. Let them see what we've built, Elara wrote. Let them understand that there are other ways to live than the endless performance of society. Spring came to Northumberland with shocking speed. One day the moors were frozen and barren. The next they were exploding with heather and wildflowers. Elara threw herself into learning the estate, the tenant farms, the accounts, the 100 small decisions that kept everything running. She discovered she was good at it, better than good. She had a head for numbers and a talent for negotiation. Within months, she'd renegotiated contracts with suppliers, found new markets for their wool, and cut unnecessary expenses without sacrificing tenant welfare. The estate started turning a profit. How did you do this? Ronan asked one evening, looking at the books with amazement. I paid attention. She smiled. You were trying to be kind to everyone. I'm just trying to be smart. There's a balance. You're remarkable. I'm practical. There's a difference. But she was remarkable, and she knew it. The terrified woman who'd fled London was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd faced the worst society could throw at her and survived, someone who'd chosen her own path instead of following the one laid out for her. News from London continued to arrive. Charlotte had left England entirely, gone to live with relatives in France. Edmund's family had retreated to their country estate in disgrace. Lady Pemberton had been forced to resign from every social committee she'd ever chaired. The mighty had fallen. And Elara felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just a distant sadness for people who'd chosen cruelty over kindness. Do you think Edmund really loved me? She asked Ronan one night. I think he loved the idea of you, the comfort you provided. But love, real love? He shook his head. That requires courage he didn't have. And Charlotte? Charlotte wanted what you had. She didn't care who she hurt to get it. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry he's dead, but I can't pretend he was innocent in all this. Neither can I. Summer brought visitors. Catherine, of course, along with a handful of society ladies who were curious about the infamous Duke and Duchess of Blackmore. They came expecting drama and found instead a working estate, happy tenants, and a couple who were genuinely content. You look different, Lady Hartley observed during a walk through the gardens. Happier. I am happy, Elara said simply. And you don't miss London? The balls, the society, the excitement? I miss parts of it, but not enough to go back. Remarkable. Lady Hartley smiled. You've done what most of us only dream of. You escaped. That night, Catherine cornered Elara in the library. The Queen wants to meet you, she said without preamble. Personally. She's fascinated by your story. Tell her I'm honored, but I can't. Elara. Catherine's expression was serious. This isn't just about society anymore. The Queen is interested in your work here. The estate reforms, the tenant programs, the way you've made this place profitable while treating people fairly. She wants to know if it could be replicated elsewhere. Elara stared at her. You're serious? Completely. There is talk of you advising on land reform policy, using your experience as a model. It was the last thing she'd expected. Not social triumph, but actual influence. The chance to change things beyond just her own life. I need to talk to Ronan. Of course. But Elara, think about it. You could do real good. Help people beyond just your own tenants. That night, Elara and Ronan sat by the fire in their bedroom, discussing the impossible offer. If you want to do this, I support you, he said, but understand what it means. We'd have to spend more time in London, deal with politics and bureaucracy and all the things we came here to escape. I know. She was quiet for a long moment. But Catherine's right. We've proven something here. That you can run an estate profitably without exploiting people. That kindness and intelligence aren't mutually exclusive. And you want to share that. I want to try. She looked at him. Is that naive? It's hopeful, which is different. He pulled her close. We'll do it together, like everything else. 6 months after fleeing London in disgrace, Elara and Ronan returned as advisors to the crown. Not as society darlings performing for approval, but as experts with actual knowledge to share. The gossips didn't know what to make of it. The first meeting with the queen was terrifying. Elara wore her finest dress, rehearsed her presentations, prepared for judgment. Instead, the queen looked at her with sharp, intelligent eyes and said, "Lady Blackmore, I'm told you've achieved the impossible, made your husband's failing estates profitable while keeping the tenants happy. How?" And Elara told her, not with false modesty or political maneuvering, but with honest assessment of what they'd done. The compromises, the innovations, the hard choices. The queen listened intently, asked pointed questions, and at the end said simply, "This is good work, important work. I want you to continue it." Walking out of the palace, Ronan squeezed her hand. "You just changed the future of English land management. I just had a conversation. You just proved that the woman they tried to destroy is stronger than all of them combined." That night, at a dinner hosted by the Duke of Wellington, society's most powerful figures gathered to meet the infamous Blackmores. Elara braced for judgment, for whispered cruelty. Instead, they asked questions about the estate, the reforms, the work they were doing. They treated her like an expert, not a scandal. And in the corner, looking older and smaller than Elara remembered, Lady Pemberton sat alone. No one speaking to her, no one acknowledging her presence. Their eyes met across the room. Pemberton's face twisted with hatred and defeat. Elara felt nothing but pity. She turned away, back to Ronan and the life they'd built from the ashes of destruction. They'd won. Not through revenge or social maneuvering, but by refusing to be broken. By choosing truth over performance, substance over status. By surviving. And that, Elara realized, was the greatest victory of all. And that, Elara realized, was the greatest victory of all. But victory, she was learning, was never quite as simple as a single triumphant moment. It was what came after that mattered. What you built from the ruins, how you used the power you'd earned. The morning after the Wellington dinner, Elara woke to find Ronan already dressed and staring out their London townhouse window at the grey dawn. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. Thinking. He turned to face her. "Last night changed things. They're listening to us now. Actually listening. But the question is, what do we do with that?" "We do what we came here to do, help reform the land management system." "Is that really all you want?" His expression was unreadable. "Because I saw how they looked at you last night. Not like a scandal or a curiosity, like someone who matters. Someone with real power." "I don't want power." "Don't you?" He crossed to sit beside her on the bed. "Elara, you could have influence, real influence, shape policy, change lives. But it would mean staying in London more, playing the political game. And you don't want that. I want you to be happy, whatever that looks like." He took her hand. "But I need to know, are we building a temporary compromise or a permanent life? Because I can't keep straddling both worlds indefinitely." It was the question she'd been avoiding for weeks. The truth was, she liked the work, liked feeling useful, important, capable of changing things beyond her own small sphere. But she also loved Northumberland, loved the simplicity and honesty of their life there. "I don't know," she admitted. 6 months ago, I just wanted to survive. Now I have choices, and I don't know which one is right. Then we figure it out together. Like everything else." He kissed her forehead. "But Elara, whatever you choose it because you want it, not because you think you should, or because society expects it." Before she could respond, Catherine burst into the room without knocking. "Have you seen the papers?" "Catherine, for the love of, we're still in bed." "This is more important than propriety." She thrust a newspaper at them. "Read." The headline made Elara's blood run cold. "Duchess of Blackmore's radical proposals spark outrage." "What proposals?" Ronan demanded. The ones you discussed with the Queen's advisors yesterday, Catherine said. Someone leaked them to the press, and they're spinning it as an attack on traditional landowners. Elara snatched the paper, scanning the article with growing horror. Everything she'd said in confidence about rent caps, tenant protections, profit sharing, had been twisted into a portrait of her as a dangerous radical trying to undermine English society. Lady Blackmore, once infamous for her scandalous history, now seeks to revolutionize land ownership in ways that would cripple the aristocracy, she read aloud. One must question whether a woman with such questionable judgment should be advising the crown on matters of national importance. Let me guess, Ronan said darkly. The source is anonymous but well-connected? Lord Pemberton, Catherine confirmed. Lady Pemberton might be socially destroyed, but her husband still has political power, and he's using it. Elara set down the paper, feeling the old, familiar weight of judgment settling on her shoulders. So we're back where we started, under attack for daring to challenge the status quo. Not quite, Catherine said. Last time you had no allies. This time? She produced another paper. The Times is defending you, so is the Manchester Guardian, and 3 members of Parliament have publicly supported your proposals. 3 out of hundreds. It's a start. And Elara? Catherine's expression was fierce. This time, you're not fighting for survival. You're fighting for something that matters. That's different. She was right. This wasn't about Elara's reputation or social standing. It was about whether real change was possible, or whether the old systems would crush anyone who challenged them. What do we do? She asked Ronan. We fight, but smarter than before. He was already moving, getting dressed. Pemberton wants to paint you as a dangerous radical? Fine. We show them exactly how reasonable and necessary these reforms are, with evidence, data, real examples from Blackmore. And if they still refuse to listen, then we build our own movement, find other landowners willing to try our methods, prove it works on a larger scale. His eyes were calculating. We turn this from a political fight into a practical demonstration. It was brilliant and terrifying. The next weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and public battles. Pemberton's faction fought them at every turn, using every trick to discredit Elara's work. They dredged up the old scandals, questioned her morality, suggested she was corrupting the Duke, but Elara had learned how to fight. She met every attack with facts, every insult with dignity, every attempt to shame her with unflinching honesty. At a particularly brutal parliamentary hearing, Lord Pemberton himself confronted her. Lady Blackmore, your proposals would bankrupt half the estates in England. Can you truly justify such reckless policy? Lord Pemberton, my proposals would require landowners to treat their tenants like human beings instead of profit margins. If that bankrupts them, perhaps they shouldn't be landowners. The room erupted, half in outrage, half in shocked approval. Pemberton's face went purple. You dare! I dare to suggest that survival shouldn't require exploitation, that dignity isn't a luxury only the wealthy deserve. She stood, facing him directly. You've spent months trying to destroy me, Lord Pemberton, first through your wife's schemes, now through political sabotage. But here's what you don't understand. I'm not afraid of you anymore. None of us are. Us? The women you've silenced, the tenants you've exploited, the people you've treated as beneath your notice. Her voice rang clear. We're done being quiet, and no amount of your manipulation is going to stop what's coming. The silence was absolute. Then, from the gallery, someone started clapping, then another, then a wave of applause that drowned out Pemberton's sputtering protests. Elara walked out of that hearing room knowing she'd just made a powerful enemy, but she'd also made something more important, a statement that couldn't be taken back. That night, their London townhouse was besieged by visitors, reformers, journalists, other women who'd been fighting similar battles. They stayed up until dawn, planning strategy, sharing stories, building alliances. This is bigger than land reform now, Catherine observed, watching the crowd. You've started something. I didn't mean to. The best revolutions usually aren't planned. She smiled. You just wanted to save your own estate. Now you're changing the entire system. Was she? Elara looked around the room, at women arguing policy, at men discussing tenant welfare, at people from completely different worlds finding common ground. Maybe Catherine was right. Maybe this was bigger than she'd realized. Ronan found her later, alone on the terrace. Overwhelming? He asked. Completely. She leaned against him. 6 months ago, I just wanted to stop being the woman everyone pitied. Now I'm leading a reform movement I didn't ask for. You could stop, walk away. We could go back to Northumberland and let others fight this battle. Could we? Really? She turned to face him. After everything we've said, everything we've started? If you wanted to, yes. I'd support you either way. She knew he meant it, but she also knew she couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when there was actual chance of changing things. I think I'm stuck, she said. I think I accidentally found my purpose, and I can't unfind it. Then we're stuck together. He kissed her softly. Fortunately, I'm getting used to being stuck with you. The real turning point came 3 months later, at a gathering Elara had organized, a conference bringing together landowners, tenants, reformers, and politicians. It was risky putting all these opposing groups in one room, but it was also necessary. The first day was chaos. Landowners accused reformers of destroying tradition. Tenants confronted owners about exploitation. Arguments erupted, voices rose, and Elara began to think the whole thing was a disaster. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly landowner from Cornwall stood up. Lord Ashworth, conservative to his bones, staunch opponent of all reform. I've been listening to these debates for 2 days, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. And I've come to a conclusion. The room went silent. Lady Blackmore is right. Gasps erupted. Pemberton shot to his feet. Ashworth, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I've reviewed her data from Blackmore Estate, the profit margins, the tenant satisfaction, the long-term sustainability. It works. Everything she's proposing actually works. He looked directly at Elara. I was prepared to oppose you on principle, Your Grace, but I can't argue with results. Your methods aren't just ethical, they're profitable. Any landowner with sense should be implementing them. You're a traitor to your class, Pemberton hissed. I'm a pragmatist, and I'm tired of watching good estates fail because their owners are too proud to adapt. Ashworth's voice hardened. The world is changing, Pemberton. Either change with it or get left behind. Other voices joined in. First one, then another, then a cascade. Landowners who'd quietly been watching Blackmore's success, waiting to see if it was sustainable. They'd seen enough. By the end of the conference, 12 major estates had committed to implementing Elara's reforms. Not everyone, Pemberton and his faction still opposed her viciously, but it was a beginning. More than that, it was proof. The months that followed were exhausting but exhilarating. Elara traveled between Northumberland and London, advising estates, training managers, building a network of reformers. Ronan worked beside her, handling the political maneuvering she hated while she focused on practical implementation. They fought constantly, over strategy, over compromises, over how much to push and when to pull back. But they fought together, and that made all the difference. You're impossible, he told her after one particularly heated argument about negotiating with moderate conservatives. You're stubborn. Oh, we're perfect for each other. Tragically, yes. 1 year after fleeing London in disgrace, Elara stood before Parliament presenting formal reform proposals. Not as a supplicant or a curiosity, but as an expert whose work had proven itself. Lord Pemberton made one final attempt to destroy her. The Duchess asks us to trust her judgment, he said, his voice dripping contempt. But this is a woman who drove one man to suicide, married another for money, and now seeks to upend centuries of tradition. Why should we listen to someone with such questionable character? The chamber stirred. This was the moment. Accept the attack or fight back. Elara stood slowly. Lord Pemberton is correct about one thing. I am the woman at the center of last year's greatest scandal. Edmund Hartwell did die, and yes, I rejected his attempts at reconciliation. Charlotte Preston did betray me, and I did leave London rather than face the consequences. She paused. But here's what Lord Pemberton won't tell you. His wife orchestrated that entire scandal. Intercepted letters, planted rumors, deliberately destroyed lives for the sake of petty revenge. That's a lie. It's documented fact. Your own household servant confessed, remember? The same servant whose testimony destroyed your wife's reputation. Elara's voice was steel. You're attacking my character because you can't attack my work. Because 12 estates are now more profitable using my methods than they ever were using yours. Because tenants are thriving instead of barely surviving. Because I've proven that your way, the old way, isn't the only way. You're a woman. You don't understand. I understand profit margins, Lord Pemberton. I understand sustainability. I understand that treating people with dignity doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. She looked around the chamber. My character is fair game. Question it all you want. But don't you dare use it to dismiss work that's changing lives. That's cowardice. The vote came 3 days later. The reform bill passed by a narrow margin. Not everything Elara wanted, but far more than anyone had thought possible. Ronan found her afterward, sitting alone in a quiet corridor, staring at nothing. We won, he said. Did we? She looked up at him. It's a compromise bill, watered down, full of exceptions and loopholes. It's a beginning, which is more than we had a year ago. He sat beside her. Elara, you just changed national policy. You, a woman they tried to destroy for the crime of surviving betrayal, just rewrote the rules of English land management. That's extraordinary. It doesn't feel extraordinary. It feels exhausting. That's because real change is exhausting, but it's also permanent. He took her hand. The question is, what now? We've proven our point. We could step back, let others carry this forward. Is that what you want? I want you to be happy, and I'm not sure this is making you happy anymore. He was right. The victory felt hollow. She'd achieved more than she'd ever dreamed, but somewhere in the fighting and politics and endless maneuvering, she'd lost the joy that had driven her in the beginning. I miss Northumberland, she admitted. I miss our life there. The simplicity. Then let's go home. But the work will continue without us micromanaging every detail. We've built a movement, Elara. Trained people, established systems. It doesn't need us to survive anymore. He smiled. We can consult, visit occasionally, stay involved, but we don't have to live in London fighting political battles every day. The relief that flooded through her was answer enough. They left London a week later, but this time there was no desperate midnight flight. This time they left as heroes, celebrated, respected, having changed the world in small but meaningful ways. The journey north felt like coming up for air after drowning. When Blackmore Estate came into view, Elara felt something in her chest settle. This was home. Not the temporary refuge they'd fled to, but the permanent foundation they'd built together. Mrs. Brennan greeted them with tears and joy. Welcome home, your graces. Truly home this time. Truly home, Elara confirmed. The estate had thrived in their absence. The managers they'd trained had implemented everything perfectly. Tenants were prosperous, harvests were good. The books showed healthy profits. We're not needed here either, Ronan observed, looking over the reports. Maybe that's the point, Elara said. We built something that doesn't require us to work ourselves to death maintaining it, something sustainable. So what do we do now? She looked at him. This man who'd offered her safety when she had nothing, who'd fought beside her, who'd loved her through scandal and triumph and everything between. Now we live. The first months back were strange. After a year of constant urgency and crisis, the quiet rhythm of estate life felt almost foreign. But slowly, they remembered how to breathe, how to take walks without purpose, have conversations without strategy, simply exist without performing. Catherine visited frequently, bringing news from London. The reform movement was growing, spreading beyond what they'd started. Other women were stepping into leadership, pushing even harder than Elara had. They're calling you the mother of the movement, Catherine told her. That's horrifying. That's accurate. You started this. Now others are running with it. She smiled. You're allowed to rest, you know. You've earned it. Had she? Sometimes Elara still felt like the terrified woman who'd walked into that first ball wearing red like armor. But when she looked in the mirror now, she saw someone different. Someone who'd survived, fought, won, and chosen to walk away from victory on her own terms. Someone free. 2 years after their marriage, on a winter evening very like the one when they'd first met, Ronan found Elara in the library reading by firelight. I have news, he said. She looked up. Good or bad? Strange. He sat beside her. Lord Pemberton died last week. Heart failure. Elara was quiet for a moment. I should feel something. Should you? He tried to destroy us. I know, but he failed. We won, and now he's just gone. She closed her book. Does that make us terrible people, that I feel nothing? It makes us human. You've moved past him, past all of it. That's not cruelty, it's growth. His wife is still alive, though, Lady Pemberton. Alone, powerless, forgotten by society she once ruled. Ronan's expression was unreadable. That's a harder punishment than anything we could have inflicted. We didn't inflict it, she did it to herself. Fair point. That spring brought unexpected news. Charlotte Preston had returned to England, not to London. She'd settled in Bath, quiet and reclusive. She'd written Elara a letter. It sat on the desk for 3 days before Elara could bring herself to open it. Dear Elara, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry that asks for absolution, but the kind that acknowledges I destroyed something precious. You were my friend, my best friend, and I betrayed that for a man who didn't love either of us. Edmund's death haunts me. Not because I loved him, but because I realize now I never did. I loved what he represented. Escape from being second best. Proof that I could win. But I didn't win. I lost everything that mattered, and you survived. More than survived. You built something real. I'm not asking for your friendship. I'm just asking you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You were always the brave one. I was just too jealous to admit it. I hope you're happy. You deserve happiness. Charlotte Elara read the letter twice, then set it down. What will you do? Ronan asked. Nothing. What is there to do? She looked at him. She's sorry. I believe her. But sorry doesn't undo the damage, and I don't need her apology to move forward. Do you want to see her? Talk to her? Maybe someday, when it doesn't hurt anymore. She took a breath. But not now. Now I just want to let it go. Then let it go. It was that simple, and that hard. 3 years after their marriage, Elara discovered she was pregnant. The news terrified her. Emma had died in childbirth, and Ronan's fear was palpable. We don't have to do this, he said, his face pale. There are ways to prevent. I want this baby, Ronan. But if something happens to you, then we'll face it together, like everything else. She took his hands. I'm not Emma. This isn't the same situation, and I need you to trust me. I do trust you. I'm just scared. So am I. But I'm doing it anyway. The pregnancy was difficult. Elara spent months terrified. Ronan barely left her side, and every doctor in 3 counties was consulted. But when their daughter was born on a summer morning, healthy, furious, perfect, Elara understood what survival had really been for. Not just to endure, but to build, to create, to leave something behind. They named her Emma Catherine Blackmore, for the wife Ronan had lost and the sister who'd saved them both. When Elara held her daughter for the first time, Ronan beside her looking stunned and joyful and terrified, she felt something settle in her soul. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not victory or vindication or revenge. Just this, the chance to build a life worth living, to love and be loved without pretense, to create something good from the ashes of destruction. 5 years after fleeing London in disgrace, Elara and Ronan hosted a gathering at Blackmore Estate. Not a political event or a reform conference, but a celebration. An anniversary party for their marriage, a christening for their daughter, a moment to honor everyone who'd fought beside them. Catherine came, of course, and Lord Ashworth, who'd become a close ally. And dozens of other landowners, reformers, tenants, people whose lives had changed because 2 broken people had refused to stay broken. As the sun set over the moors, turning everything gold and crimson, Elara stood on the terrace watching her guests laugh and dance and simply be happy. Regrets? Ronan asked, appearing beside her with Emma in his arms. About what? Leaving London, giving up political power, choosing this quiet life instead of changing the world. Elara looked at her husband, her daughter, her home. We did change the world, just not the way anyone expected. How so? We proved you can survive being destroyed, that you can choose love over fear, truth over performance, real life over social games. She smiled. We proved that the people who tried to break us didn't get to win. That's changing the world too. Is it enough? It's more than enough. It's everything. Emma made a noise, half laugh, half protest, and reached for Elara. She took her daughter, feeling the warm weight of her, the absolute trust in how she nestled close. This was victory, not the hollow triumph of defeating enemies, but the solid weight of building something that would outlast them all. Inside, Catherine was organizing dancing. Someone had produced a fiddle, and the great hall was filling with music and laughter. Elara and Ronan joined them, Emma giggling as they spun her between them. And watching from the edge of the room, unnoticed by anyone, was a woman in a simple gray dress. She'd arrived late, uncertain of her welcome. Charlotte Preston stood in the doorway of Blackmore Estate and watched Elara dance with her family. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, everything stopped. 5 years of pain and betrayal and consequences hung between them. Then Elara smiled. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. They'd both survived their own disasters. Both built new lives from ruins. That was enough. Charlotte nodded once, a ghost of a smile on her own face. Then she slipped away into the night, and Elara let her go. Some chapters closed with grand gestures and dramatic conclusions. Others just ended. Quietly, without ceremony, because there was nothing left to say. As the party continued into the night, Elara found herself back on the terrace with Ronan, Emma asleep in her arms. "Do you remember that first ball?" she asked, "when we made our arrangement? I remember thinking you looked like you wanted to burn the world down." "I did. Do you still?" She considered the question. The woman she'd been 5 years ago, desperate, terrified, armored in red silk, felt like someone from another life. That woman had wanted destruction, wanted to prove she was unbreakable even if it killed her. This woman, the one she'd become, wanted something different. "No," she said finally. "I don't want to burn the world down anymore. I just want to live in it, honestly, fully, without apologizing for surviving." "And have you? Stopped apologizing?" "I'm getting there." She looked at him. "Some days I still hear their voices. The ones who said I wasn't good enough, that I deserved what happened, that I should hide in shame. But they're getting quieter." "Good. Because they were always wrong." Emma stirred, made a small sound of protest at being disturbed. Elara rocked her gently, watching stars appear over the moors. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for offering me an alliance when I had nothing, for loving me even when I was terrified to love you back." Her throat tightened. "For choosing me, every day, even when it was hard." "Elara, I mean it. You saved my life, Ronan, not from scandal or gossip, but from believing I was what they said I was. You saw something worth fighting for when I couldn't." He pulled her close, carefully, mindful of their sleeping daughter. "You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. Then we saved each other. Deal." They stood there as the party continued behind them, as stars wheeled overhead, as their daughter slept peacefully between them. And Elara felt something she hadn't felt in years: complete peace. She'd started this journey broken and desperate, willing to do anything to survive. She'd made deals, worn armor, fought battles she never wanted. She'd been judged, condemned, destroyed, and rebuilt. And somewhere in all that chaos, she'd found herself. Not the perfect society lady she'd pretended to be, or the scandalous woman they'd tried to make her, but something in between. Someone real. Flawed. Strong. Free. Someone who'd looked at impossible odds and refused to quit. Someone who'd turned survival into transformation. The music from the Great Hall drifted out to them, joyful, chaotic, perfectly imperfect. Inside, people who'd been enemies were now friends. Systems that had seemed unbreakable were changing, slowly but surely. And at the center of it all was the simple truth that two wounded people had refused to let their wounds define them. "We should go back inside," Ronan said, "before Catherine sends a search party." "One more minute." He waited, patient as always. Elara looked out at the moors, wild and beautiful and utterly honest. This was home. Not just the estate or the house, but this feeling, this bone-deep certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "All right," she said finally. "Let's go back." They walked inside together, into warmth and light and laughter, into the life they'd built from ashes and anger and impossible hope. And if London still whispered about them, about the scandalous Duchess and the reclusive Duke who defied every expectation, well, let them whisper. Elara Whitcomb Blackmore had spent enough of her life caring what others thought. Now she was too busy living to listen. The party lasted until dawn, and when the last guests finally departed, Elara and Ronan stood in the entrance hall of Blackmore Estate, exhausted, happy, covered in their daughter's spit-up, and completely content. "We did it," Catherine said, collapsing into a chair. "We actually survived society and came out the other side." "We did more than survive," Elara corrected. "We won." "Did we? Pemberton's dead, but his allies are still fighting reform. Charlotte's returned but broken. Edmund's gone. London society still judges us." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't feel like a clean victory." "It's not supposed to be clean. Real life never is." Elara sat beside her, Emma still sleeping peacefully. "But we're here. We're happy. We changed things that needed changing and walked away from things that didn't matter. That's victory enough." Wise words from the woman who wanted to burn everything down 5 years ago. 5 years changes a person. It certainly changed you. Catherine's expression softened. "I'm proud of you, Elara. Both of you. You took the worst thing that could happen and turned it into something beautiful." After Catherine left, after Emma was settled in the nursery, after the house finally fell quiet, Elara found herself back in the library where it had all begun. The room where she'd first kissed Ronan, where they'd planned their campaign, where they'd built their partnership into something real. Ronan found her there, sitting in the same chair she'd occupied that first night, feeling nostalgic, feeling grateful. She looked up at him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices? If you'd never offered that alliance? If I'd hidden in the country like everyone expected?" "Sometimes, but not often." He sat across from her. "We made the choices we made. They led us here. That's enough." "Is it enough for you? Really?" She needed to know. "You gave up so much. Your privacy, your peace, your hatred of society. You could have stayed buried in Northumberland forever. And I would have died there, slowly, quietly, but died nonetheless." He leaned forward. "Elara, you didn't just give me a reason to return to London. You gave me a reason to live again, to hope, to believe that second chances were possible. Even after everything we went through? Especially after everything we went through, because we went through it together." She crossed to him, settled into his lap like she'd done 1,000 times before. His arms came around her automatically, holding her close. "I love you," she said simply. "Not because you saved me or protected me or gave me a title, but because you see me. Really see me. All the broken, messy, imperfect parts, and you love me anyway. Those parts are my favorite parts. You're ridiculous. I'm honest." He kissed her softly. "You're the bravest person I know, Elara, and I'm honored, truly honored, to spend my life beside you." They sat there in the firelight, holding each other, and Elara thought about the journey they'd taken. From that first desperate alliance to this moment of quiet contentment, all the battles fought, all the wounds healed, all the impossible things they'd survived together. The world outside would keep turning. London would keep gossiping. Enemies would keep plotting. Change would keep coming, slow and difficult and necessary. But here, in this moment, in this room where everything had started, Elara and Ronan had everything they needed. Each other. Their daughter sleeping upstairs. A home built on truth instead of pretense. And the knowledge that they'd face the worst society could throw at them and emerge not just intact, but stronger. That was the real victory, not the reforms or the recognition or the reversal of their reputations, but the simple fact that they'd refused to be broken by a world designed to break people like them. They'd chosen love over fear, truth over performance, life over mere survival. And in doing so, they'd built something that would outlast every scandal, every judgment, every attempt to destroy them. They'd built a legacy, not of perfection or power or political triumph, but of courage, of two wounded souls who found each other in darkness and chose to walk toward light together. That was their story, that was their victory, and that was enough.